Welcome to the If I Had More Time podcast at Mariners Church. This podcast series invites you into a casual conversation with our senior pastor, Eric Geiger, and our teaching team to hear a few helpful insights and truths they wish they had time to include in the weekend message. Be sure that you have listened to this weekend's message prior to listening to the podcast so you get the most out of our current series. We hope you enjoy it. Thanks so much for joining us today for the If I Had More Time podcast. We're in week 3 of our series, Song of Solomon. This weekend's message is on dating and deciding. It is a fun one. And we've all been so enjoying this series. We're loving seeing all of you in those series guides throughout the weekend. And we're just praying that your life groups have had fruitful conversation. I know mine has. Yeah. I've had incredible conversations. I'm in a young adults group, 20s, 30s women, and we've had some really fruitful conversations. Most of the women in my group are single. And then my husband and I have had such fruitful conversation. It really is. It has been for everybody. We're having a blast with it.
Good.
What about you guys? How's it going for you? We have Eric Geiger, our senior pastor. He seems like he's having fun teaching. Dallas is having fun too.
Kate tells me that she loves that I'm studying this book. She says I'm like a better husband.
Yeah.
So I'm like, babe, we can go longer. We can stretch out the series if it's that helpful for our marriage. You know?
That's right.
You know,
Dallas is here for the first time since we've kicked off Thursday nights. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about what you've seen in the young adult community with the series.
Oh, I mean, they're like leaning in, drawing in. Like I remember night 1 of Song of Solomon. I don't even think you were trying to interact, but just the content itself, and people are leaning in like, no way. Yes, yes, I agree with that. So it's been super
There's
fun.
been a couple times I've had to try to really pull the crowd back.
Yes.
I can't remember what it was on that
I think
first
you lost
night.
them at Fawns.
They were gone.
Yeah. It really, I mean, it has been a blast, but also so practical and helpful, insightful, and it's a beautiful text. So I'm grateful for all the ways that our church is growing. You hit on a lot in this sermon as well. Each of them have been jam-packed.
Yep.
If you had a little more time, if we gave you a few more minutes, what would you have added?
Yeah. So the Genesis passage where God's design of man and woman coming together and becoming one flesh, Genesis chapter 2, I referenced that in the sermon. But if I had more time, I would have hit some other New Testament passages. So, we stayed just in the Old Testament. We were in Song of Solomon, an Old Testament book, and then Genesis, Old Testament book. And one of the drafts, which I had to, take some words out to get it into the time allotted, had the passage in Corinthians where the Apostle Paul says to husbands, hey, your body is not only for you, your body also belongs to your wife. And wives, your body is not only for you, it also belongs to your husband. Some women have not liked that passage because they're like, wow, it's my body. I don't want it to belong to my husband. And they have viewed that as actually a oppressive passage for women. But really, it's the opposite when you understand the culture, because in that culture, women were they had really no rights. They were viewed as property. And so Paul is writing a very upside down, controversial approach, because he's also saying, husbands, you belong to your wife. Which was shocking, because in that culture, a husband, a man would never belong to his wife. So what he's emphasizing is you belong to each other because you're one person now. You're one flesh. So if I had more time, I would have thread that out. The beauty of becoming one. It's not only sexual in marriage. That is the illustration of the whole, but it's also emotional, spiritual, economic. You really become fully committed to one another. And so you're unified, you're one flesh, one person. Yeah. But it's, again, not just physical, but the totality. But the physical is part of it, and it's important. And that's why in the scripture, the physical should be part of all of the other as well.
Yeah.
In other words, you're not uniting physically, but not uniting socially.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're uniting you're fully uniting when you unite.
Yes, which is in alignment with how everything else that God's word says about us. We are much more than just physical beings.
Yes.
Spiritual, emotional. We have souls. We have
because
minds.
You're a whole person. When you unite with a whole person, it should be the whole person uniting, not just physically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you even said that, like it's not two half people
Right.
coming together, like standing up there doing a wedding, like, so this half person became this half person.
Oh, it's I mean, there's been some bad statements at Christian weddings before where, hey, you were half a person and you were looking for your whole and now you're finally a whole person.
Cringe.
Big time cringe. It's such a demeaning thing to how God has made us and to God himself, because God doesn't, when we become a Christian, we aren't half a person.
No.
He's fully redeemed us and made us whole and healed us. And so it's actually a diss on God, you know, to say that you're half a person. To a Christian, tell a Christian you're half a person? Come on.
For the hopeless romantics, though, that's an attractive thing. You know, it's similar to how you brought up the whole idea of the one.
Well, the hopeless romantics surely did not like that part.
Yeah, we might have hurt some feelings.
We messed up some romantic, some rom-com movies.
Yes, but it'll be better for everybody in the end if we get this right. Right?
It will. And so I think let's throw that one on the table, and then some other dating myths that you hear, Dallas, on the table. Let's talk about that one.
Yeah, let's hit it. Okay, so walk us through again this hilarious tree that was created, beginning with Jack and Jill, resulting in Tinder.
Jack and Jill went up a hill. Although I think, are they brother and sister?
Yeah, we weren't sure.
We don't know. So we didn't say that part.
Don't follow the metaphor all the way, okay, guys?
Yeah, don't mix metaphors here. Like a parable, Jesus was making one point. I'm making 1 point with this illustration.
That's right.
So Jack, if you believe that there's only one person of the 8 billion people in the world, I mean, you logically think about what you're really saying. Then you're really believing that there's not been any kind of messing up, you know, one generation or even 5 months before or a couple years before, because it would only take one person messing up to mess it up for everybody.
Yeah.
So Jack was supposed to marry Jill because that's his one, if you believe this, but he didn't. He had a bad month, and things were, so he just wasn't thinking clearly. So he married.
He had a bad month.
So bad year. Wasn't walking with the Lord. Who knows? Moved to the wrong city on accident.
I'll pray for John.
Got out of God's will, got out of God's perfect will, and took a job in Wyoming instead of Des Moines. Misheard God, and then met the person who wasn't his one. He was supposed to marry Jill, but instead he married who did I say it was? Susan. He married Susan. Yep. He married Susan, who
I'm sure is a lovely girl.
Susan, no, I personally have nothing against Susan, but if you think that there's the one, then he really messed up, and he didn't just mess up his life. Susan had another one that she's not now marrying because she married the wrong one. So Susan's one named Steve. Steve can't marry Susan because Susan's married to Jack. Jack's just jacked this whole thing up. And so now Steve's got to marry Debbie, but Debbie was supposed to marry Dan. And so it just the waterfall impact of this.
Yeah.
So it's just not logical. It's just not logical to believe that there is one person. Not logical. But also, I'm not a logic professor. I'm a pastor. Biblically, the emphasis is not on finding the one. Mm-hmm. Biblically, it is, will you commit to be one with one? Will you commit to be one with one person? Mm-hmm. That's the emphasis. And that's what I think is a more liberating view. Think about the pressure it puts on people. Yeah. If you believe right now there's only one person on the planet that you're going to marry, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That is severe pressure.
Not just to find, but also to keep then. How many people would stay in things that they should not, are not working out for whatever reason, It's all the way to the point of it being a harmful, unhealthy relationship. But if I really believe that this is my soulmate, then I better figure it out, and
ignore red flags.
Yes, right. Yeah. So
on the third date, this person said this, but this might be my one, so I need to stick it out I still need to go to date 4. And it also is a little connected to, I need this person because this person completes me. Mm-hmm. So there is a connection between the one and me feeling incomplete.
Mhm.
You know,
And I think it could even keep people single for a long time because you are viewing everybody, oh, that's not the one. I didn't have this connection, like whatever you built up in your head of what the one is going to be.
yeah.
When I encounter the one, I will just know.
Because what's going to happen is we're going to leave dinner and there's going to be like a light rain
Yeah.
and there's going to be a full moon. And then we're going to gaze into each other's eyes. We're going to lock each other's eyes. And then I will have a rush of emotion just like I saw in that movie. We're going to kiss and it's going to be like an electric jolt through my body. And then the next day, he's taking me to Paris to ask me to engage, and we're going to lock locks on the bridge over the Seine River. We're going to go to the Eiffel Tower, and there's going to be a violinist playing.
Maybe you are a hopeless romantic.
Have you been watching Hallmark movies?
No, I'm saying, like, if you get that in your head,
Yes.
then wow. I mean, that you are putting a lot of pressure on yourself, and you're also putting a lot of pressure on whatever you think that first through 4 dates are going to be like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And you even kind of hit that a little bit, which I really appreciated. Right after the one, you went into like intentionally dating.
Yep.
Like, how do you get to know someone? And the questions you ask, which I thought were really, really beneficial, really, really practical, of the questions that you ask on that first date. And we could like maybe unpack that a little bit more of just some funny stories of like, hey,
I don't know if it's on the first date, but it's progressively over time.
That's what it's like on the first date.
Oh, what should I ask on the first date?
Yeah, it's not like you're not like, would you really know on the first date? Like my brain struggles with that.
I personally do not think on date one I'm asking, how many kids you want to have? What you
Please
thinking?
don't. Please.
What you think? What you thinking? Just out of curiosity, what you thinking?
The one would know.
Yeah, exactly. If it was the one, we would
Yeah.
hey, on the count of 3, let's say how many kids.
Yeah.
1, 2. Then we said the same amount.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's destiny.
Yeah.
I'd be in trouble. Roddy wants 4 kids. And I was like, whoa.
That was Kay. Kay wanted 4, I wanted 2, and we got 3. No, I did not force that.
Yeah.
And actually,
Unpack there.
I'm sure it's the only thing you've ever wanted in that household.
There are times. That's true. There are times that I probably shouldn't even admit this on a podcast. I do at times wish we'd gone for 3. Yeah. Anyway, so we probably should have compromised right in the middle. I'll tell you that I had this wasn't a date. This was I think a young adult woman who believed in the one. And Kay knows this, so she's listening. She's not going to be shocked by the story. She's
I can't wait
not
now.
finding something out on the podcast. This is pre-K. All right, this is my freshman year of college. I was like traveling around speaking guy already, speaking at a bunch of youth events. This I don't know. She's probably a sophomore, junior in college. She's at this youth event. I'm a freshman in college. She comes up to me and says, "So are you called to be a pastor?" And I thought, I think I am. And she looks at me and says, I just met her. I mean, we've talked for like 5 minutes. She looks at me and says, "Oh, that's great. I'm called to be a pastor's wife." To which I was like, I didn't have at that point. There's nothing else to say. Yeah. We had nothing to talk about. So I was really awkward then, even more awkward than I am now. I was like, it's good to meet you. See ya. I mean, I didn't know what to do. I mean, it was so bad.
So add that to the list of things that you don't say when you first meet someone.
I was only answering Dallas's question on.
I think it's great. I think that's a good
so
place to start.
Do not do that on the first time.
Yes, it's probably wise. I think that something that has happened even in Christendom is this whole idea of transparency very early on. It is, people talk often about going too far physically too fast. I think that you can get a little too vulnerable or emotionally vulnerable too fast, meaning you could confess your deepest, darkest sin to me on a first date for the reasons of transparency. And
it'd be overwhelming.
And it'd be a little overwhelming, and
jarring.
at some point, it's an important conversation you should have with the person, especially when you are on your way to seriously dating engagement.
Right.
But that early on, just big caution against that.
Yeah. And so we're following this couple, attraction,
Uh-huh.
pursuit, this is like intentional dating. This is when I do think you want to have the transparent conversations. But to your point, I would not be having. You should not have the depth of conversations on date one as you are when it's kind of clear. Hey, we're now dating, and my recommendation is we're exclusive, and we are pursuing each other only.
Yeah.
With the mindset of, is this going to be the person I marry?
Right.
And you're verbalizing, like making it known. Like I had to make that known to my wife. I want to pursue you and pursue you alone. There was nobody else. It was just you, and we were intentional, more in depth as the months.
Now, when you said that, was it also clear, hey, that intentional for me means that we're dating not just for fun, but to see if we are going to marry one another?
Oh yeah, this is the path towards marriage.
You said that.
Yeah,
That's great.
I'm curious, did you and Roddy say that too?
Absolutely. I will say
How far into when it was so there's pursuit that you guys are dating.
Yep.
When you became exclusive and verbally like we're only dating each other, was it also the same time as you said this is to see if we're gonna marry?
Yes, and we had previous friendship before, so I think we both knew this about one another. And this message is called dating and deciding. It's not just dating. The purpose of dating is for a decision for marriage. So I think we also both implicitly knew that. I actually, we're kind of dogging on the people on the first date. I think Roddy and I knew probably on the first or second date, but we didn't talk about it right away. No way one of us would have said that. That would, even though we were both thinking it would have freaked the other person out, right? Yeah. So it was a couple of months at least. I would, 2 or 3 before one of us even hinted at something long term, and then we kind of we're like, oh my gosh, we freaked out for a second, and then let it sit for probably another month before we picked it back up again. Okay. It's an overwhelming thing.
I'm curious though, because now
Go ahead.
It's been 27 years for me, so times have changed a bit.
Yeah.
So I can tell you how it was with Kay and me. It was early that it was, hey, we're dating, but I'm not dating. I'm not like trying to date just to have fun. So I am crazy about you. I could sense it going to marriage, but I want to be sure. And so, at that point, if we had lived in a village and the chief of the village said, this is an arranged marriage, I'd have rejoiced. You know what I'm saying? And by the way, that's worked for lots of people.
It has.
For thousands of years.
Absolutely.
Yeah. To the point of committing is more important than chemistry.
Yep.
That's
right.
Like it's worked for lots of people. So I would have been great with that, but because I was crazy about her, but we went on a really quick process of we were dating to decide. Yeah. So what language did you use, Liz? I'm looking for language.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
I'm trying to learn from the young people on the language. What's the language today?
I will say Roddy really led in a lot of this part. So it was a lot of following his lead, but he made it clear from the start what his intentions were. I think
how does he phrase that?
It was
I'm not so funny. I'm not trying to.
I think
Liz is Liz is no longer the host.
Yeah. I know. This was not planned. Okay.
This was not.
So for us, because we worked together too, that was kind of the easy way. He would say things like, our roles in our ministry are incredibly important to both of us. You and I both know I would never do something to jeopardize that if I was not incredibly serious about this.
Okay.
I really care about these things. I really value these things in you. There are a couple of things that I don't know about you yet, and I really want to get to know those things about you. So for us, it was like he knew what I was like at work. He knew what I was like around my friends. It was for us kind of the last thing was that spiritual intimacy that you have with the depth of relationship, And so he was kind of like, I just really look forward to getting to know you more and more. You're somebody I always want to spend more time with. So I feel like we're not the best example.
No, but the language he was saying was this is deeper for me than just I'm looking for a dinner companion on Tuesday night.
Exactly.
You know, he was sending a really strong signal that this has intentionality behind it.
Right. Yeah. Right. And he was bringing me into decisions he was making in his life. Yeah. You know, he was interested in some like extracurricular courses and things like that, or looking at just different things he wanted to invest his time in, and he would bring me along in those decisions, and I felt a part of that. I felt like he wanted me also to be invested in his future as well, and vice versa. So then,
I think that's great.
Yeah, So way to go, Rodney. Shout out to you.
That's really well done. And so and then you used, what language did you use?
I was 20 years old, so we have been together for like 13 years.
Okay.
So stumbled upon my words more than likely, but there were moments of, hey, I want to pursue you, pursuing you alone. There's nobody else. And then, hey, I could see myself marrying you. So having those conversations, once we got a couple, like we were in college, we wanted a degree before we wanted rings. And we knew.
I did rings before the degree, but whatever.
Yeah. We didn't.
Both have been fruitful.
Great. Both of them were. I actually don't even follow. I would give advice to not follow what I did.
Yeah.
Like, just get married. Just get married and figure it out. But yeah, there were, as we got on, quickly realized, this is it. We're gonna get married.
Dude, that was me. I was like, I'm marrying this. I'm marrying her. All I gotta do is take a couple extra speaking engagements to pay for health insurance. And I'm marrying her.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
You showed her though, like, I'm making plans for you.
Yes.
You know, that's good. Okay, let's talk about a couple more myths.
Okay.
So another one that you touched on a little bit was this whole idea of I can change them. In dating and deciding, you are going on a few dates and you do see a few of those red flags, but you're super, super excited. Yes. And I hear time and time again this whole idea of I can change them.
Yep.
So you hit on a couple of non-negotiables, one of them being a Christian.
Be sure the person's a Christian. And God does change a person over time.
Yeah.
But he also changes you. You know, the sanctification happens for both people in the relationship. It is, I've seen this frequently, it is a mistake to think that, well, once the person marries me, then there's going to be these dramatic changes. That's not how the person is pretty much the same person the day before marriage as the day after marriage. And you're actually getting typically a better version of the person during dating than after marriage. So if you're thinking that, you know, on a scale of 0 to 10, in terms of his kindness to me, he's a 4, but we get married, I think he can become an 8. No. That's not the order of how it typically goes. Now, can God completely intervene? Of course, God can intervene. Yeah. But just realize that there's not this magical shift that happens in the person's character from one day to the next.
Right. Dallas, talk a little bit about, what's the fine line, right? Between I'm not a perfect person, they're not a perfect person, they're not going to get every single thing right. What's the fine line between needing some kind of change and the grace for the other person?
Leading with grace is what I would always recommend. Lead with grace. I always think back, you taught on forgiveness one week, and you had like all the ways that you've been forgiven by God, and then it was like, flip it over, like, who do you need to forgive? I'm just going to stay on this side, and helping people see that. Leading with curiosity too is, hey, be more curious. Where are they? How can you stack hands together? So for my wife and I, we've always been in some sort of Bible study together. We've always been reading God's word together, growing together, doing things together, having grace for her. And there are certain things that I love doing premarital counseling, because we have this thing with Simbas. Who did it growing up? Who's going to do it now? The expectations. Simbas, saving your marriage before it starts. Okay. And it's always fun.
I thought you said Simba I had like a Lion King moment in my head. I know what it is, but the listener may not know what Simba is.
Simba, saving your marriage before it starts. And
it's a course that we have.
It's a course, but there's also a test, and it's not
like a pass-fail test.
Yeah.
It's like an
assessment.
Yes.
An assessment. Yes. Walk couples through it. It's so fun. And like the grace that they have for one another in yard, like down to everything, yard work and and how they interact with one another. But hey, you might need a little bit more grace and understanding who they are, why they are wired. You need to extend grace, you need to receive grace, but it's working together, and it all goes back to the commitment. I'm committed to my wife. I'm going to have grace for her. I'm going to walk alongside her every single day with her.
Yeah.
Even if I reload the dishwasher because I'm way too type A for that. And that's on me. That's my issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At what point you referenced mentors in your message as well, or parents?
Yeah,
depending on who it is.
I've told people before, even if your parents aren't Christians, they love you.
Camera.
And so you should listen to your parents' view on who you're considering marrying.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, bring them into the conversation. If you don't have a relationship with your parents, or if you never had a father or mother, or they've passed, I think that's why it's important to be in a life group at church, to have other people who can speak into your intentional dating.
Yeah.
Don't make this kind of decision alone.
Yeah.
This isn't really we're talking about committing to someone.
Yeah.
It's got to be more than chemistry. It's a commitment.
Yeah.
And I think it works for both parties too. So I brought my wife around my family, and it's good for her to understand a little bit more of who it
gives
works.
her insight into who
gives
you
her
are.
insight. So including her on things,
Yeah.
and letting my parents and my whole family see, I want you to get so comfortable with her, where she's so comfortable with you, so you see how beautiful this person is, just as I do.
Yeah.
That you're at that level of comfort.
I've got a memory of my dad when we met, when I brought Kay home for that time. He says, I only got a couple questions.
Oh, no.
And he had he put a paper together, and he let it out, and it went all the way to the ground. So it looked like, he
was just giving her a hard
like
time.
a massive scroll. And we just all started dying laughing.
Yeah.
He did it to lighten the mood, really.
Yeah.
It was really special. But that week that Kay visited our house, my parents fell in love with her, and I do agree with everything you said. It gave Kay insight into how I grew up, into my family, and then me visiting Kay's family. Same thing. Same thing. So it's really good.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, we have one final. We're not sure if this is a myth. Part of it, I think, is a myth. But we have one final little dating phrase that we'd like to unpack. This whole idea of when you know, you know. I used to hear this phrase.
When you know, you know.
And I was like, are we sure about that? Because people are saying when you know, and then they're getting married in 6 weeks, and I thought that was ludicrous.
Yeah.
And then there I was, I got married in 3 months. So I was humbled.
It's not a verse in the Bible.
No, it's not.
So we're not putting it at that level.
No.
So how about we say, okay, let's talk about when that statement is true.
Yes, there we go.
When it's not true.
Great.
Yeah. First date. Not true. Like when you know, like, oh, I had a great first date. Let's go.
Just because you had a first date.
You had a great first date.
Yeah.
Right?
Fair.
Could be, and because you don't know enough about the person.
Yeah, I like, if you just grab coffee with someone.
The only time I'll say it's okay on the first date is if you live in a village where they do arranged marriage.
But at that point, it's more about the commitment.
At that point, it's about the commitment, and you're now in a covenant relationship. Then I guess it worked.
Mm-hmm.
Eric, correct me if I'm wrong. Do you think that it might be a little simpler for all of us if we were still doing arranged marriages?
So
you've hinted at this a couple times now.
Well, I'm as I've been studying, I would not have said what I'm about to say in the sermon, but I do find it fascinating or even perplexing that marriage rates are at the lowest they've been, while at the same time we have more tools to find people than we've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
There's a paradox there.
absolutely.
Yeah.
As opposed to, there was a time when you would never, in like an agricultural society where you weren't flying across the country, you grew up and lived in an area. I'm talking like hundreds of years ago. You would marry someone from that town.
Yep.
You were never, meeting someone on an app 3 hours away.
Yeah.
but marriage rates were higher then than now,
Totally.
right? So I don't have it worked out in my mind how to articulate this. This is why I'm just kind of, but that's why I keep bringing it up a little bit.
Mhm.
There was, it seemed, a greater emphasis on commitment, and now there seems a greater emphasis on chemistry.
Right.
And the greater emphasis on chemistry is not resulting in more marriages, it's resulting in less marriages.
Yeah. Yeah.
The greater emphasis on commitment seems to result in more marriages.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm bringing up the arranged marriage in a village.
Absolutely.
I'm just kind of curious about, we have all of the tools at our disposal and marriage rates are down.
Yeah. I mean, to get a little bit closer than arranged marriages in another part of the world, my grandparents, so they were married for 71 years.
That's amazing.
They
Props.
So grandfather was born in 1918. Grandmother was born in like 24.
So he was born in the Great Depression.
Yes, both of them children of depression, which came through in all the ways that I was raised.
They had cash under their
Oh yeah,
mattresses.
that woman ironed wrapping paper.
Yeah,
Okay,
yep, seriously.
They're amazing. But similar, he was a professor. She worked at the university. I think they went on a date.
What university?
Massachusetts Amherst.
Okay, yeah, I know. I'm familiar.
He taught food science. I don't think anybody here is super familiar with his field, but he wrote a book on the anatomy of a tomato. You guys,
Come on.
Oh.
like
Sounds like a super genius.
I know, right? He was. Yes.
I'm sure. Sorry.
But they met, went on a date, and 2 weeks later I think they didn't even use the word engaged. That it was different then. They were more like betrothed.
Oh, that's
but
great.
I had this similar thought where they did not talk about it like it was this transcendent love at first sight. I knew that I knew that I knew. It was a decision. And
Yes.
I have often thought about them.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Was it just simpler because my grandmother met a man who had a great job. He was respectful. He cared for his family.
Right.
Like they both were Catholic, which meant a lot to both of them. You know, like did they just find things that were really, really of utmost importance to them, and all of those other things they said I'm willing to commit to and have some grace for. You know, like I'm not looking for perfection.
They made a commitment and had such integrity to stick with their commitment.
Yeah. So I'm kind of with you where I'm like, there's something about it that works. You know.
But end it with parents. If you go back to the parent part, like my parents love me, that if they were to pick someone for me, like I would respect them so much because they love me so much that they want me to succeed. Totally, they care for me.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So let's go back to the myth.
Yes. So when you know, you know. What do we think?
I think there's some positives to it, to that. So I wouldn't put it in a myth category. I think it could, maybe it's a true myth. You know,
Yeah.
Like there's times it's not true and times it is.
Yeah.
I definitely had that moment with Kay, you know, where I'm like, I want to commit to this woman. Yeah. You know, I know, and I'm willing to move some things around in my life. I'm going.
Yeah.
I am going.
Yep.
You know,
I think that's true. I would say I had a similar experience. Yeah. Let's talk about some of the risks, perhaps. Maybe it's not untrue, but what might be some risks of waiting on that feeling?
Yeah, I think it would depend on how you know.
Yeah.
You know, if you have a long list of, well, I'll know when, and it's a bunch of unrealistic things opposite of your grandparents, you know, then I don't know if you can trust your own list, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, trusting your own feelings. How many times has that failed me?
A lot.
Yeah.
We have one more area that I wanted us to talk about today that, Eric, you closed this message so beautifully, touching on people who, when they hear these things, they hear how God talks about dating, relationships, sex, and marriage. They're even filled with grief to some extent because of a life previously before Jesus, or as they've been with Jesus and they've had to repent from some way of life,
or even right now, you know, wrestling with things right now. Regrets, or in a relationship that they have some guilt or shame over, or feeling like they are in a series of bad choices. That's a really common, because relationships are so important to us. Because we fall short of who God is, and because we aren't perfect people, there's a plethora of people who have made, in our church, who've made relational choices that they deeply regret. I mean, before I met Jesus, my gosh, I mean, the pain that I brought into my own life, the shame that I brought into my own life with choices revolving around relationships and sex are really painful. So it's not painful to me now, because I really do believe that Jesus completely took me as I was and cleansed me and made me a brand new person. And he wants you, the listener, right now, right as you are. He's not asking you to fix a bunch of things in your life and then you come to him for grace. Yeah. He wants you to come to him right now for grace. And the message of the Christian faith is he wants you, and then he cleanses you and makes you his own. There is complete forgiveness. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Some say he's the God of second chances. He's much more than the God of second chances. I mean, I needed an infinite number of chances. He's the God of brand new beginnings. No matter how many new beginnings you need, his mercies are new every day.
Yeah. Regardless of how great your shame is, Jesus is even greater than your shame.
Amen.
Yeah. And because of that, there is still time and opportunity for healthy relationships.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
He redeems us to himself and restores us also to relationships with others.
Yes, you were not damaged goods. You were not the summation of your previous choices. Yeah. That's not how God sees you. And there is, for sure, not only restoration with him, but vertically, but restoration with other people horizontally. Mm-hmm. God has great plans for you.
That's right. Yeah. And I think that's such a good reminder that I even do, is just imputed righteousness, how the Father looks down on me. And it's so encouraging to me that when he looks down on me, he doesn't see all of my shame, all of my sin, all the ways that I continuously fall short, but he just sees the precious Son in Jesus.
Amen. Well said, man. That is some great theology right there, Dallas. Not bad for somebody named after a city.
That's right. City named after me as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Everybody, thanks so much for joining us for the If I Had More Time podcast. Thanks for joining us today on the If I Had More Time podcast hosted by Mariners Church. We hope to see you next weekend at any of our congregations across Southern California or online. To view our service times at each congregation, be sure to check out our website at marinerschurch.org.